The History Man with Terry Kringle.
Hello. It was in the middle of May 1966 when Britain's National Union of Seamen started a threatened countrywide strike over pay and working conditions. It had been clear in advance that it would be a disaster for the Isle of Man, and the Manx government tried hard to persuade the NUS to exempt the island because it would suffer exceptional hardship. But it refused to do so. All it would do was allow so-called mercy ships to carry essential basic supplies to the island when needed, the crews of which would donate their wages to the NUS strike fund. But even this was not as helpful to the people of the island as it might have been hoped. When the strike was in full swing, the NUS Assistant Secretary, Tom Sutton, came across on a flying visit, presumably by air, and made things worse. He refused to allow certain raw materials needed by Manx industrial concerns to maintain production to be delivered on the mercy ships. This was a clear sign of the Union's grim determination not to ease up on anybody suffering serious problems because of the stoppage. It was a hard line, as hard as iron. It goes without saying that Manx members of the Union had had to come out on strike, which meant those working for the Steam Packet Company and the Ramsey Steamship Company. They were still living in the local community, and obviously their identities were well known to friends and neighbours. It was understood that they had to obey Union orders, and there was no hostility to them at first. But as the strike began to bite with the passage of time and the non-arrival of early-season holidaymakers by sea, the situation reached the point where a protest march on the Douglas office of the National Union of Seamen was organised. Fortunately, Tynwald had set up a strike emergency committee, and this managed to have this demonstration called off. But an undercurrent of hostility remained, and when the TT races, to be held in early June, had to be called off, the situation was reaching boiling point. Airlifts had brought in some essential goods, but not many holidaymakers. Some food and other goods were being brought into Peel by local fishing boats, but this was only what might be called a drop in the ocean. It was now clear that there was going to be increasing unemployment if the strike continued. In June it was announced that the TT was going to have to be held over until August, and this was a signal that the usual holiday months were going to be an unmitigated disaster. Now the Manx public had run out of patience and tolerance, and there was real hostility towards the striking Manx seamen. Violence was in the air, and the Douglas offices of the National Union of Seamen were almost under siege. The strike ended on July the 2nd, and the NUS had its way. The first steam packet boat to arrive in Douglas was the Manxman, and she was greeted at the Victoria Pier by celebrations led by the Douglas Town Band and scores of drum majorettes. Then everybody got to work repairing the damage to the Manx economy. Meanwhile, Tynwald was looking to the future. It was decided that there should be a huge stockpile of essential materials put together, covering every possible need, so that the island could fall back on it if there was another seaman strike, threatening to isolate the island from the outside world again.